how did you go about creating this piece as a film rather than a live theater production, which is traditionally what you do?
Sure. So we collaborated with Professor Philip Hopper over in the Department of Communication and Media, and specifically he had a documentary film class last semester. So the students from Professor Hopper's class came in to become the film crew, and Phil served sort of as the film's director of directing all the different shots for the film. And so we were able to take what we were doing and be mindful of the fact that we were filming as we were directing and putting it up on stage, but then Phil and his students came in and did the actual filming, and then they did the editing afterwards for it and put it together as a film. So it was a really interesting process for us because our students got to learn about what film acting is like and how it's different. Things like we might yell cut in the middle, we may cut different things together. There were places where we had to do things called pickups where they would bring the camera in close to record what the actors' hands are doing, those kinds of things, which is very different than a process on stage where you start at point A rehearsing and you rehearse all the way until opening night and then you do it a few times and then you're done. Here it was actually a rolling date. Each student for their two pieces was on one night, and that was when they had to be prepared, and then once they were done with that, they were finished. And so that was very different for them and a very good experience because many of our students, given what's going on right now, film and media is so huge that most actors coming out of programs now are probably going to do some film or television in addition to theater, or maybe even end up completely in film and television. And so it's a really good experience for the students here to get to do that, especially with people who know what they're doing, and the students over and the professors over in communication and media. I mean, Phil is a filmmaker. He does a really great job with that, and so it was great for the students to get to work with him. And then his students actually in the documentary class, one of their assignments was to create a documentary about the process of making this. And so there's a few short documentaries that his students created, and then I believe Phil's also working to put it together into a more feature-length documentary.
And so with actors who traditionally are more familiar with stage acting and mannerisms and projecting, how did they have to dial back or dial in their performances to convey that on film rather than a stage?
Yeah, it was. It was a really, it was interesting for them because a lot of the things we talked about were how much smaller it can be, and that we worked so hard with our students to fill the whole space in the theater, which our theater is huge. And then now we could say, no, you don't have to be that loud, actually. And maybe for this character, it's not. That being able to speak in a more conversational tone, and also the fact that we were doing close-ups on their faces, meant that acting, unless stylistically it was supposed to be really big, which there were a few pieces that were that way, but acting was more subtle. And what's interesting, too, is that some students really gravitated toward that, and we have a few students that, you look at them and go, oh, you're just made for the camera. Like, the camera loves you, you love being on camera, that mode of acting is really sort of in your wheelhouse. And so I think a few of the students discovered that they really like working on film and that film really suits them as actors, whereas others were like, maybe not so much.
Well, with doing, it's great to me, having two, essentially a soliloquy and another piece, that was probably even more difficult because they had to have mannerisms in this piece that were counter in the next piece because I'm responding to essentially what I just did as this character.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think they're creating two distinct characters, and some of them, the first one was a monologue, and some of them it was a scene working with another person, but that's one character in one style, which is the big, broad Greek acting style. And then, depending on what they created for their second piece, it was something completely different that they then had to also embody. So I think it was a really good experience in that sense of creating multiple characters. And then also the writing piece of it. It's very rare that you get to create your own work. And so for the students to be able to use their own voices, create their own work, and then have it fully produced was a really unique opportunity.